Welcome to Sips with Scrubs. This is the podcast about nursing related topics primarily, but we will also discuss other healthcare related topics. We're going to go everywhere from burnout to crazy patient experiences to things we hate about nursing to things we love and everything in between. So this is a podcast for all nurses primarily, but anybody interested in becoming a nurse or who has been one for several years. It's a platform where we can build a community together and just discuss what we could do better together and what we've been through, just sharing experiences basically. So you guys will definitely see how this is all going to play out if you continue on our journey with me. I'm calling this my Rebrand episode because formerly on YouTube, I was referring to this as Talk Nurse with Me, but going forward, it will be called Sips with Scrubs. So I'm really excited about that. If you are listening, this is your first episode. I do have 29 other previous episodes on YouTube under the name Talk Nurse with Me. So it's basically the same sort of premise, but now we just got a cute name and we're just getting really serious about this. So without further ado, we're going to get into this episode, our Rebrand episode. So today we'll be sipping on Andre. I believe that's how it's pronounced. It is a pink Moscato. The flavor profile is described as fresh picked strawberries. It's to be paired with desserts or an after dinner drink, and the alcohol content is 9.5%. So that's what we'll be sipping on, and we'll be snacking on sushi. Ideally, a dessert, but I'm hungry and it's time to eat. So we'll be snacking on sushi. So that's what we'll be sipping and snacking on. Next, we're going to get into what would Laney do. So I saw this post on a Facebook group that I follow that's for nurses, and I wanted to give my input on it. So the scenario is a patient has 2 PRNs for pain, both for severe pain of 7 to 10, but one for breakthrough pain. One is a Norco tap and the other is morphine IV push. That's the breakthrough. Both are every 4 hours. And the person went on to say, so of course, patient may get Norco, for example, at 4 p.m., but wants the morphine at 5. The nurse is trying to alternate it every 4 hours, but patient screams bloody murder of pain greater than childbirth. Doctor called who said no to the Dilaudid, which is what the patient really wants, and to give the PRNs that are already prescribed. What would you do? So, what would Laney do? I know what I'll do. I pretty much do the same thing for each patient that I have that are complaining of pain. This nurse already reached out to the doctors to see if there was something else that could be administered for this patient, and the doctor said no. So okay, that alleviates me from that need. That's already been addressed. I'll definitely document that. And then from there, I'll just explain to the patient, the doctor wants to attempt to manage your pain on these 2 medications. And I tell them that Norco does take a longer time to kick in, but, pills are normally it takes up to an hour to work, whereas the morphine will be a little bit faster, which is why it's for breakthrough. So I'll just explain to them what's each one for and the different effects of them. And what I like to do is I kind of give them the decision, because I feel like sometimes patients don't feel like they have power in the hospital and we're always telling them what to do. So I tell them what I like to do in this situation is either I could give you the Norco every 4 hours, and when you're feeling like you're having excruciating pain, I could come in and give you the morphine, or I could give you the I could give you the Norco in 2 hours, and then I could give you the morphine 2 hours after that, so that you have something in between. I like to tell the patients that if they decide to get the Norco at 4, for instance, and the morphine at 5, that they won't be able to get anything for pain until 8 o'clock. So they'll be 3 hours without being able to receive anything for pain. So I like to tell them this is the reason why I like to space it out, because it kind of seems like you're always having coverage. So for example, I'll give you the Norco at 4 p.m. You can get your morphine at 6, and then at 8 o'clock you get the Norco again. So it's kind of more spaced out. But ultimately, I leave it up to the patient. I just tell them what the medications are for, and I give them the decision on how they want to take it. this patient, since they're requesting Dilaudid, seems like they're familiar with pain. And so their tolerance might be a little bit different. They may know, what works best for them in their situation. So I like to ask the patients about stuff like that, because evidently maybe you know something I don't, and it's your body or whatever. And then, you're okay with the decision because it was a decision that you decided to make. So that's how I would handle that. If you guys are on YouTube, go ahead and comment down below. What would you do in this situation as the nurse, and how would you explain it to the patient? So I like to do that little segment because I just like to give my little 2 cents. Maybe it'll help somebody out there. And then also it provides us with scenario-like situations, and we can share with each other what we would do in those sorts of situations. So next, I want to go into introduction for people who are tuning in for the first time. I am Nurse Laney. I've been a nurse for up to 4 years now, I believe, if I could count correctly. I've worked in so many different units. So mainly med-surg and IMU is where I've worked primarily. I think I did med-surg for like 2 years, and I did IMU for 2 years. And now I'm currently doing float pool, which is where I get to go to different hospitals based on their needs. And they basically float me anywhere in the hospital that's not like ER, ICU, LND, or peds. So I've worked on ortho units, neurosurgery units, like cardiovascular units, like all stroke units, all sorts of units. So I kind of have like a wide range of experience. And that's another contributing factor for Sips with Scrubs. I'm able to provide a lot of insight on different things because I've worked on several units, whereas the typical nurse may have only worked on like 1 or 2. So I have like different opinions on certain things because I've seen different things essentially. And I've not worked as an ER nurse, but I've worked in the ER as a whole nurse. So I've seen kind of how some of that stuff works too. So like I said, I just feel like my input is a little bit different than your typical nurse. And this is just, like I said, a platform for us to share opinions and thoughts and things on various topics. I will be having other nurses and techs and things like that on the episodes with me. So check that out going forward. We'll be having lots of guests. I have some exciting things planned. If you guys are listening, if I'm pausing, I'm sipping wine or eating a sushi roll. Just to give you guys a heads up. You guys on YouTube will be able to see what I'm doing. But if y'all hear a pause, I didn't go away yet. I'm just, taking a little sip. So I'm actually going to take a sip of the Andre Pink Moscato now because I haven't tasted it before, and I'm going to let you guys know what I think about it. I also failed to mention that I got this for $5.47 at Total Wine, so that's really affordable. I actually really like this, and I do agree. I think it would be really good with the dessert or something. It's sweet, but it's not like overwhelmingly sweet where like my jaws are tingling or anything like that. So I really do like it. I probably wouldn't suggest to eat this with sushi because it's not going to do anything for your palate. It's just, I'm eating this because I'm hungry. So I'm going to take a bite of my sushi roll now. If you guys are chilling at home or wherever you are, grab a glass of wine, grab a snack, sip and snack with me as we talk throughout this episode. We will be going over some housekeeping, just for a couple of minutes so you guys can understand like what's my vision for this podcast and like why am I doing this and things of that nature. I always find that interesting. So I wanted to share that with you guys. So go ahead, pour you a little glass, get a snack. You can get some water, tea, whatever you're feeling at the moment. Hopefully I don't annoy you guys with talking with my mouth full or the smacking. I apologize in advance. I might have just turned some people off right now. Okay, so we're gonna get into the rebrand, some housekeeping things like I stated before. So why am I doing this? Like, let's start there. What are you doing this for? What's the purpose? So if you guys have been following on YouTube, I've had episodes of Talk Nurse with me where it's going to be the same premise as Sips with Scrubs, just a little bit more refined. And I initially started my YouTube channel just in general for like kind of like informational purposes in regards to COVID. When COVID first started, or it was like, it had been like a couple months. I noticed there was a lot of like miscommunication out there in regards to COVID, what it was, what the symptoms were, what are we doing about it in the hospital, and things of that nature. And I worked as a COVID nurse. Like, I'm still working with COVID patients, but I started working with COVID patients in the very beginning when the pandemic first broke out. So I had some insight that other people did not have, even some nurses, because if you weren't working on the unit, you weren't really getting that sort of information. You were just getting information that the public was also getting. So I originally started my YouTube channel so I can get communication about in regards to COVID that was accurate. And I'm like a normal person. So I'm like, hey, this is what it is. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's real. I'm seeing people die and this is what we're doing about it or trying to do about it and things of that nature. So that's what it initially started off as. And then as time went on, I realized it was very therapeutic for me talking about these things and reflecting on like what I went through in my shifts and things of that nature. I never took the time out before the pandemic to really just think about like what I've seen and the type of patients I had, or even talk to other nurses about what we went through. It was more of I come to work, do the job, and then I leave, and I leave the work at work, essentially. But during the pandemic, it was very hard for me to do that for obvious, well, I feel like it's obvious reasons, but just because it was so much going on, it was becoming overwhelming. So talking about it and doing stuff in regards to nursing on my YouTube channel helped me like alleviate some of the stress. And like I said, it was just very therapeutic. So I was just doing this for fun mainly, and because it was a stress reliever. So it's kind of like a coping mechanism as well. So from there, I started the Talk Nurse With Me because I just thought it would be fun to do. And I wasn't sure like how serious I wanted to take it. How long did I even think I'd be doing this for? So I was just like, I don't know, I just do it like it's a hobby, you know what I'm saying? It still is a hobby, but I'm taking it a little bit more serious now and like making a format, trying to get the audio nice, get the visuals nice, things of that nature. Like, I actually enjoy doing it. So that's why I'm doing this, because it's fun. And like I said it in the beginning of the episode, it just gives you a sense of community and an opportunity for other nurses to talk with me or with each other about different stuff that we may not get to talk about at work because we're like in work mode. So that's what we're doing this for. And the reason why we're rebranding, like I mentioned before, I didn't know how serious I wanted to take this. So I was just doing it. But now I'm like, okay, now that I know that I really like doing this, like I'm going to take it more seriously. So I had to ask myself, like, is this what you want to do? Like, I had to ask that about several things in my life. I'm trying to like make the most out of my time, I guess you could say, like the most bang for my buck. So I'm going back through like every part of my life. Like, is this what you want to do? Is this what's making you happy? Is this keeping you fulfilled? Things of that nature. So this is one of the things that I like doing. So I'm going to continue to do it. And I was also asking myself with that, is there a better use of my time? Like, what can I spend my time doing? Little segue, but kind of connects here. I have like a lot of different passions, especially when it comes to nursing. And I didn't know how to channel that, I guess is the best way to say it. So like, I've always been passionate about education and things like that, and informing people who don't know about anything, like especially when it comes to nursing, just kind of basically putting people on game. So this gives me an opportunity to do that as well. So I don't know if anybody is like me out there, but sometimes when I think about stuff, I'm like, oh, is this a job, or how do I do this with my job? Like, do I want to work and do that? Because when I like was approached in like high school about careers and things, it's like, what do you like to do for fun mixed with like how to make money, sort of. So with education, I'm like, oh, do I want to be a nurse educator after bedside, or like, what is that about? Like, what do I want to do essentially? And I just learned, like, I guess as I'm growing older, there's other ways to do what you want to do that's not necessarily you doing just the job title for it, if that makes sense. Like, for instance, initially I wanted to be a peds nurse, but when I did peds clinicals, I was like, I don't think this is for me. But I liked kids. And then I was thinking like, well, okay, eventually I'll just become a mom and then I have my own kids. And then I can teach them what I want to teach them, and I can, do what I want to do with them instead of trying to work within the confines of somebody else's stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like, you can do what you want to do, but it doesn't have to be your job. if that makes any sort of sense to you guys out there. So right now, I'm currently still enjoying my bedside nurse, very much so. I'm liking the float pool, so I'm sticking with that for now. It gives me a lot of flexibility, so I can do things like this. So right now, I'm good. But that's just like my whole thought process with the whole rebranding thing and how did I decide to do this and things of that nature. And then just lastly, just wrapping this little topic up, I had to like remember my why. So that kind of goes back to like the nurse educated thing. Is like, okay, do I want to be a nurse educator or do I just like talking to people? Like you can talk to people without that being your job. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, what do I feel like is my purpose in life? I feel like my purpose is to like serve people, which is part of the reason why I became a nurse, because it's I don't want to say an unfulfilled job, but it's a job of service. You know, that's like the whole focus of it, and that's how I wanted to live my life, is in service to other people and things of that nature. So this is also a part of service. I'm talking to people about things they've been through. I'm educating people who don't know what the heck is going on in the nursing world. So that's my why, guys. Tell me what you guys think about it in the comments. If you guys are on YouTube, if you guys are listening, I really don't know how this works just yet. We're just experimenting, but y'all are along for the journey. So I'm grateful for you guys tuning in. And now we're going to get into our topic of the day. Which is going to be talking about time management in nursing and time management as a nurse, because they're not the same thing. So sometimes on these episodes, I do like flesh out the thought process beforehand, and I have specific points that I want to make during the episode. But on this one, I'm just kind of like going with the wind with it. So y'all follow along with me as best as you can. If I say anything weird, I'm blaming it on the wine. If my thoughts are kind of random, y'all, literally, this is how my mind works. So I'm just giving you guys a heads up that I don't know how well this could be pieced together, because I didn't plan this all the way out. So I'm going to take another sip of my wine for those listening, and we're going to get into the topic. So we'll first start off talking about time management in nursing. Time management in nursing is like arguably one of the most important things in nursing. I'm not gonna say it's the most important thing, but it's definitely up there, because literally it can make or break you. And just for those who are not familiar, who's not a nurse yet, I'll just kind of tell you guys what time management is. It's literally what it sounds like. It's just basically, how do you split up your time as a nurse? So we have 12 hours that we work. What do you do in those 12 hours? And how do you take care of everything that you need to take care of in your shift? With that being said, nursing is 24 hours, so sometimes things are not going to get done, and you're going to have to learn how to recognize what are priorities and what are not priorities. So that kind of ties into time management as well, because knowing what are your priorities help you manage your time. So the easiest thing to talk about is like stat orders. Stat orders have to be done immediately. Like I say no more than 30 minutes from after the doctor orders it. And then everything else is pretty much routine, which means like either like wound care, say for instance, either you'll get it done once a shift or it's done like daily. So then you'll communicate with day or night shift, whichever one you are. Hey, did you do this today? Is that still pending for this patient or what? So I guess the first step with time management is just learning how to identify what is a priority and what is not a priority. So we talked about stat orders and routine orders, and then not everything is as laid out as that. That's kind of very simple. We could kind of go into like the routine of the day, like medications. You can manage your meds. Like what I like to do is that I like to start as early as possible with medications. For those who are not familiar, you have an hour before and an hour after to administer medications. So if you have 9 o'clock scheduled meds, which is what they normally do on day shift, and even on night shift, they'll do like 2100 meds. You have from 0800 to 1000 to pass meds. So that's from 8 to 10 o'clock to pass the 9 o'clock meds. So with that being said, I like to start early as possible, because you never know what's going to happen during your shift. You don't know who's being discharged. Maybe you have an admission. So it's easy just to knock things out right away. So by starting early, that helps you manage your time, because then you have more time allotted to do other things that might be spontaneous and pop up. Meds are pretty much like the easiest thing to manage, because you kind of know what is already ordered for the day. Now, some doctors may come in later and add like a pill or two here and there. So you'll have to go back and probably give that a little bit later, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, because that does happen. And to make the most use of your time, I'm going to tell y'all what to do. But going back to that thought, you know that these meds are going to be given at this time because your MAR tells you. So you can work your day around your med pass or passes. Also, another thing is like the ACHS patients, you have to see if they're going to get insulin at those times. So you could also work around those times. And then for the things that are kind of like I said, like wound care and stuff like that, to maximize your time, if they have like a med to be administered around a certain time, you could just do the wound care when you're already in there about to pass meds. Because like I said, there's not a specific time for wound care. It's just like either daily or twice a day or something like that. So just do it all together. So that's the concept. That concept is basically called cluster care, which is what I really like to do as a nurse, because like I said, get the most bang for your buck. You're already in the room, you're already talking to the patient. There's no need for you to go back and forth. So along with the kind of the routine of how I do my nursing day, I like to gather supplies that I know I will need later in the day, probably in the morning, because a lot of the times in the morning, there's no one bothering you. So I like to get to work somewhat earlier. But now that I'm an older nurse, I know how to do these things quicker. But when I was a new nurse, I used to get there 30 minutes before, just to look at everything for the patient, all the orders and things of that nature. And then I can anticipate what I might need for that shift, depending on what they have going on. So for instance, with the PEG tube and tube fees like that, I'd go ahead and get extra tubing and that piston syringe or whatever it's called, that little case that you use in order to give meds for the patient. I'll go ahead and gather that, so that on my first round, I can drop it off in the room. If I have an incontinent patient, I'm not gonna wait till they have a bowel movement or they urinate in order to get wipes in the trucks in there. I'm gonna grab those in the morning and get enough for the entire shift. Does that make sense? So that's kind of how I maximize my time, along with the priority things. Now, I do wanna go back to the medication passes like I was referring to. Sometimes it's kind of hard, especially during day shift. You'll go ahead and pass all your meds at 8, and then here comes the doctor putting in another order or whatever. And it's like, God dang, I just finished with that patient. What are you doing? So if that happens, we kind of, you hourly round anyway. So I'm not going to go immediately back to that room. I'm going to spread my time out so that I can see all of my patients at least once. And then I go back in the room and give them that extra pill that they just ordered. And I'd be like, oh, hey, did Dr. So-and-so come in here? Okay, well, they ordered this for you. This is what it's for. Here you go. And then it's just one pill. So it's not like you're rushing in and out and you still have already seen all your patients. In addition to meds popping up randomly, they'll do that sometimes with labs too. And it's kind of the same thing. I'm going to do it when I know I'm already going into the room, if it's not stat. If it's routine, literally you have some hours to do it. You don't have to rush to go back, continuously going back into the same room over and over, because they keep adding orders in, especially for new patients. For new patients, a lot of the times I just save them for last, because I know they're going to order them new things. For patients who've been there for quite some time, they probably already have routine basically, where there's not going to be much of a variation, so you could go ahead and get those out the way. Same thing with patients who have 3 meds or 4 meds. If it's something small like that, it's a alert oriented times 4 patient and they're ambulatory, and they can swallow well and stuff like that, I go ahead and get those out of the way first, because I know I'm not going to have to worry about them as much as a stroke patient who might need assist with feeding and things like that. So you guys do have help out there. You'll have your techs and stuff to support you, but I'm just telling you how to do it where you don't have to be as dependent on the tech for everything, and you could get what you need done. So with that being said, with a stroke patient, if they need assist with feeding, you'll give them their breakfast and their morning meds at the same time. So like I said, this is all like time management and maximizing your time, getting the most bang out of your buck. So that's just a few things that I do as a nurse to maximize it. And to just put it plainly, when you're going in a room, do everything you can in that room at that one time, and then spread yourself out amongst your patients. So it's not like you're seeing one patient 15 times and you're seeing another one time. Now, that might happen depending on how sick your patients are. And then the one who you are seeing infrequently, you want that to be the one that you know is like stable and is good. So that's kind of how I do my time management as a nurse. And I don't ever really leave late. I just not going to do that. I leave at a good time pretty much all the time. The only time I'm late is if I have a cold or a rapid. And then for that reason, I'm like, that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? And then I just thought too about charting and stuff. So I kind of do mine differently. Sometimes I'll do it. Well, all the time I want it done at least by 12 o'clock. Let's just start there. Ideally, I want it done before 10, but that's not always realistic depending on how many patients you have. So in regards to charting, those easy patients I was talking about, I chart on them first because they're easy, and then I don't have to worry about them anymore. If I have a patient with like 10 wounds, I chart on them last. Or I'll go ahead and do the shift assessment, and I'll save the integumentary assessment, which is the skin assessment for those who are not familiar. I'll say that for last because I know that's going to take me some time. So if I have like a more complex patient, I save it for later when I have more downtime. Whereas if it's a patient who's pretty much stable and they're there for like an infection or something like that, I'll go ahead and do them first and knock it out. So that's just how I do my charting. And I kind of just give myself like, okay, you need to get this done by 12. So it's not going on like throughout the day where you're like, oh shoot, it's 4 o'clock and I ain't chart on this patient. Like, you don't want that. So it just helps to alleviate some stress. So I do a lot of my work in the morning before lunchtime. It's kind of how I like to do it, because in the later half, I'm like, girl, I'm tired. Okay. At this point, it's emergencies only. Another thought came to me is sometimes your patients may request to like walk or like take a shower or something like that. And like I said, you do have techs, but if you're not able to completely depend on them, or if you have a tech and you can manage this on your own. I don't think everybody does this, but with my patients, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to be pretty much busy up until this time. I'll be more available to walk with you at this time, or we can take your shower at this time. Is that okay with you? Most of the time they say yes. I haven't really had anybody say no. They just wanted to get it done. So that's another thing I do. I think people don't try to negotiate, I guess you could say, with their patients. They just do what their patients ask them to do. And just because they want a shower don't mean they need to have a shower now. That's all I'm going to say. You got stuff you got to do. And if they want the shower now, okay, let me see if the tech is available to give you a shower. If not, I'll be able to assist you at this time. And then they'll just be like, okay. So that's kind of how I do my patients. I really be talking to them. Y'all need to talk to y'all patients. A lot of them are understanding if you just let them know what's going on. Like, okay, like, I got to give everybody meds. And then after that, I'll be free. I can get you set up and whatever. They just don't want you to forget about them. That's all that is. So for those who weren't doing that previously, maybe just think about that next time. And that'll help with your time management too, because at least you've getting the bulk of what you need to get done throughout the day done, before trying to do like extra stuff that's not, I don't want to say it's not pertinent, but it's not pertinent to us, but that is important to the patient. You know what I'm saying? So there is that. So now I'm going to get into time management as a nurse. And this is more so talking about managing your life as a nurse, like outside of work and inside of work, because night shift especially, it is very difficult. On days, it is a lot easier because you're already like with the same sleeping routine and things of that nature. So it's easy to like have plans with your friends and do what you like to do outside of work, because it's not really interfering unless you have an event or something like that you couldn't go to because you're at work. But I'm just going to talk about that as a little bit, because the work-life balance is very important. And if you don't maintain that, you will get burnt out. I don't know when you go get burnt out, but you will. And I'm just trying to tell y'all, because a lot of times I feel like some people may end up quitting nursing, and it's not because they don't like to do nursing anymore. It's because they did not have a good balance of work life. So I'm going to start off with talking about night shift because that's the easiest thing for me to think about right now. For nights, honestly, a lot of this stuff, it just depends on you and depends on who you are as a person and what your body can tolerate. So first, you got to be able to identify like what is a good sleeping arrangement for you. And you could get ideas and tips from other people, but honestly, it's going to be trial and error for a long time until you just figure out what works for you. So with that being said, from my personal experience, I knew that I could wake up like at 1 p.m. Like if I'm off that, like if I work that night, I could sleep until 1 and be fully functional so that I could do activities in the afternoon or in the evening. And I will say you're just always pretty much going to be tired on nights. So do the activity anyway, whether you're tired or not, because you'd rather be there making those memories with your friends and loved ones than being asleep. Like it might sound good that I don't know, I want to go to sleep, but when you start missing out on people's life and then you like, dang, these many birthdays that went by, or like, when did that happen? Oh, you was at work, or you was asleep. So sometimes just take that L, wake up, go to wherever, and then just do it like that. Or you're just gonna have to alter your schedule. Try to get your family to coordinate with you. Oh, my schedule releases this day. If you guys are having anything that y'all are thinking about doing, let me know at this time so I can self-schedule myself around it. But for me, on my off days, I did not like to sleep in. I like to wake up at 1 p.m. or 3 p.m. Sometimes people be at work, so 1 p.m., there's no point in me waking up that early if there's not nothing for me to do. So then I'll just go ahead and sleep in and schedule something for that night. So I think that's all I really have to say with the night shift thing in regards to like life outside of work. Just sometimes know you're going to have to take an L and you're going to be tired, but in hindsight, you'd rather be there for some things than not there at all. Now, don't be going on I don't know. Some people could go on road trips after, but I'm not doing that. I'll go 2 hours maybe, but more than that, baby, you got to see me tomorrow. So, like I said, on days, which is why it's more difficult to get on days sometimes, it's so much easier. You do the same thing with your family. Okay, this is my schedule. I got it up for 6 weeks. This is what's going on, and etc. And then you just make yourself off on that day they got something going on. Because days are busy too. And honestly, you don't want to do nothing when you get off work. Because when you get off, it's like 8 o'clock. And shoot, sometimes I be needing a nap. But if you know in advance, sometimes you kind of mentally prepare, like, I'm not going home after this. I'm about to go turn up, sort of thing. So just be aware of those sorts of things in time management as a nurse. I did also want to talk about with that. Hold on, lost my thought for a couple of seconds, guys. Oh, I wanted to talk about the schedule. Like I was telling you before about the self-scheduling and things of that nature, you'll have to figure out like what works best for you. That's all nursing is. A lot of this is trial and error and figuring out what works best for you. You need to figure out, okay, can I work 3 shifts in a row and then be off for like a week and then work another 3? Or do I need to split mine up like 1 on, 1 off, 1 on to be like the most active? Or do I need to do 2, then be off 1, then go on 1? It's all sorts of ways you can do your schedules working full time. And honestly, as a new nurse, I would just advise you guys to I wouldn't suggest doing 3 in a row for new nurses because I don't want to say I don't know what y'all doing, but you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. And if you're doing 3 in a row, more than likely you are going to have a bad shift because it's just, I don't know, it's just like a gamble sort of thing. Like one of them 3 gonna be bad. And I would say to do that once you're a little bit more experienced and you can handle it. So as a new nurse and maybe up to 6 months, I wouldn't suggest doing 3 in a row. You're still trying to get your feet wet and figure out what's going on. So if I'm 6 months or under, sometimes even a year or under, I would just do the 2, then off, however many, then 1, or the reverse of that. Do 1, then be off however many, and then do 2. I wouldn't suggest doing 3 in a row. I wouldn't suggest that until you're a little bit more experienced. And unless, like, the only reason I would advise to do like 3 in a row is like if you're about to go on vacation or something like that and you don't want to use your PTO, you could also do something like that because of that. But I would not advise the new nurses to do that. Also, along with that, I wouldn't advise y'all to work overtime either. Like I said, y'all are still getting y'all feet wet. So I know myself personally, I didn't start working overtime until after I was like a year old. Until I was a year old, and I think that was like pretty logical, and I think that was a good time to start trying to pick up shifts and things of that nature, because you really don't know what you're doing that first year. It's just really trying to figure it out. You might start getting the hang of it like after 6 months to a year, but trying to take on more and do extra, I wouldn't advise that until after a year. That's just me though, guys. So I've seen a lot of new nurses get burnt out by trying to pick up too much too soon. So like I said, you learn a lot about yourself as being a nurse. So you're really just going to have to figure out what works best for you. And like I said, it's going to be trial and error. So don't get too downtrodden if you didn't figure it out quickly. Like, it's just not how it works. Some people might seem like they have it all together, but I trust you, everybody's struggling a little bit somewhere, and that's just keeping it real. So I think that concludes today's episode. That's basically everything that I wanted to talk about. If you guys have any additional comments to add to like time management in nursing or time management as a nurse, go ahead and comment that down below. For people who are listening to this podcast, I am also available on YouTube if you guys want the visuals. And then, for my YouTube people who just want to listen to me, I mean, you can listen to me on YouTube without looking at it too, but you can head over to the podcast too, whatever you want to do. That's up to you. That's your business. So thank you guys for joining me for Sips with Scrubs. Like I said, I look forward to doing more of these episodes with you. It's going to be a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun things planned with other guests and things of that nature. And also, if you would like, go ahead and let me know if there's anything in specific that you want to talk about, like any specific topics or any other type of nurses that you would want on this channel. I could do like a virtual episode as well. Already done one. So that's also a possibility. On this podcast, we're also going to have different specialties on, and we'll just talk about the specialty and what that specialty entails. So Sips with Scrubs is going to be very multifaceted. It's a lot of different topics and a lot of different things that we'll talk about here. So if you guys have any additional things that y'all want us to talk about that I have not thought of, let me know. I'm working with y'all. I'm doing this for fun, but I'm doing this for you too. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this first episode, and I will see you guys next week. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for my people on YouTube. Bye.